Hello everyone and welcome to National Careers Week 2022. I am very lucky to be joined by one of my old friends. Kate is a solicitor. She is working in Birmingham at the moment, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her career, how she has ended up in the role that she's in, and what sort of study and training she's had to do to get to this position. So she's going to fill us in on everything related to law. So Kate, could you just tell us what your job title is and a little bit about your role now?
Yeah, of course. So my job title is associate, which is basically just another word for solicitor that law firms tend to use. But yeah, I'm a solicitor. I qualified in September 2020. So I've been qualified for almost a year and a half now, and I specialise in commercial law primarily, and that's with a focus on commercial disputes. So that's to summarise, like quite often if businesses have like a legal dispute, or it can be governments or other public bodies as well, fall into that sphere.
Amazing. Okay. So how did you decide that you wanted to do law? How did that come about? Did you do law at A level and then decide you wanted to carry it on, or?
So interestingly, I did a law A level, and I did enjoy it. But at that point, I'd applied to do journalism at uni. So I went to uni, did a year of journalism, and actually decided it probably wasn't for me. So what I did was thought about the A levels I enjoyed, and was like, actually, maybe I'd quite enjoy doing law as a degree. So I actually changed my course and then did a 3-year law degree. And it wasn't actually until my 3rd year that I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer, because law is a degree that you can do and there are so many options. It gives you lots of options and different paths. So yeah, I decided sort of in the first place that maybe I want to study law, but it wasn't until later on that I decided that I actually wanted to follow that through and become a lawyer.
That's so interesting. That's interesting that you made that decision after doing journalism and you're like, I'm interested in law, I'm going to do that, but not actually being 100% sure that you wanted to actually be a lawyer at that point. Because like you said, obviously doing law doesn't kind of pigeonhole you into being a lawyer. There are so many other things you can do with it.
Yeah, absolutely not. You can do sort of any kind of sort of commercial focused graduate scheme with it, for example. So yeah, there's if you decide to do a law degree, there's lots and lots of things you can do with it.
That's amazing. So if we think back then maybe to A level, and we'll just have a think about how you've got to where you are now. So what A levels did you take then? So you mentioned that you took law. What other A levels did you take?
So I did law, psychology, English language at AS level, and then English literature at AS level and English language at A level as well. And so mainly sort of the essay-based subjects.
Yeah, amazing. And then so you said you want to do journalism. Was that because you really enjoyed English language, or?
Yeah, so I think throughout school and then into A levels, English was probably the subject I enjoyed the most, and the one that I thought I was probably best at as well. I got the best grades in, and I thought journalism seemed like a natural career arising from that, and just like a really interesting career at the same time. But as I went on, I realised that you can use those skills in, like, English skills are valuable in so many different careers, and I use them, so like they're vital every day. I'm always drafting things, writing letters, even writing articles now. So it's a really good alternative way to use those skills rather than some of the more sort of traditional careers you would think of with English.
Definitely. And obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning, I know you from home. I know that you moved away for university. How did that process go? Obviously, I know that you went on to study journalism, but how did you find the process of kind of choosing where to go for uni and what course to study and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I found the process okay, but I think I found at the time probably where we studied, maybe the advice we didn't receive as much advice as we could have done. And for example, I didn't really know what a Russell Group uni was compared to other unis or things like that. So I was very much led by sort of what the league table said about good courses for journalism. Obviously, I ended up doing law, so it didn't really impact where I went. But I also went to open days and just thought about where had a good feel. And when I looked around Sheffield, I absolutely loved it. And I think that's way more important than for a lot of courses than kind of position in league tables. It's where you think like you'll get a good degree, but you'll also have a really good time and will provide you with good opportunities.
Absolutely. I feel like I do one-to-one appointments with students, and I say that to them all the time, like even with choosing your A levels, it's about choosing subjects that you're going to enjoy, and that's such a big part of it. And I always look back on sixth form with such like fond memories, like absolutely loved sixth form. It was so much fun, and I feel like that was also down to the fact that I loved the subjects I was studying. And I'm sure you were exactly the same. So I think choosing university is the same principle, maybe with even a little bit more weight on that, because if you do move away, you've got to love the place that you're living. So obviously you mentioned there that you went to Uni of Sheffield for your undergraduate. So did you you changed your degree obviously and then stayed at Sheffield University for your law degree? And then what happens after you finish? So once you've done your degree in law, what is the process in terms of more training and things like that? And where did you go to do that?
Yep, so they've actually changed the process a little bit now, but at the time, so you had to do a legal practice course if you'd done a law degree after uni. So that's 1 year, it's like a master's, which kind of, the law degree teaches you about the law itself and like analysing the law and applying the law, whereas the legal practice course teaches you a bit more about law in the relevant practice area and how to be a solicitor. So you did that for a year afterwards, or if you do a non-law degree, you had to do a year conversion course first and then move on, which taught you the fundamental like principles of law, and then you moved on to the legal practice course. And then to become a solicitor, it's a 2-year training contract. So you apply to firms, and then that's basically 2 years rotating around different departments. And then you qualify at the end, although they've changed the process a little bit now. And there's something called the SQE, which is sort of an exam that people will have to take alongside work experience to become a solicitor, rather than doing the more formal LPC and training contract route, although some firms still do the former route. So there are different ways to get into it, and now a lot of the bigger firms are now offering apprenticeships. So if uni isn't for someone, that's a really good option. You can go in with 3 A levels and then they'll train you. I think they're usually about 8 years or 6 years, but they'll train you to be a paralegal. You will get kind of a law degree as you'll study as you work. And then, eventually qualify as a solicitor. So that's another really good alternative option.
Amazing. So just for the benefit of everybody listening, what's the differences between a solicitor and a barrister? Because I think when you look at becoming a lawyer or careers in law, these terms just get thrown around. Could you just like kind of define for us the difference between the two?
Of course. So when people talk about lawyers in the UK, that's kind of an umbrella term for solicitors and barristers. And it's a little bit different to in America, where a lawyer sort of kind of does both. So in the UK, we have solicitors and barristers. The basic sort of overall difference is that barristers usually represent people in court. So they're the ones that wear the wigs and the gowns. They make the arguments in front of a judge, cross-examine witnesses, for example. Whereas solicitors usually do most of the legal work outside of court, which if it's a dispute which ends up in court, some legal work isn't, some of it's contract based and has nothing to do with court, and barrister won't be involved. But if it's a dispute, the solicitors will do the legal work leading up to court. So they'll often instruct a barrister to present the argument at court. And the solicitors are usually the first point of contact with the client who needs legal advice, often do the legal research, drafting letters, drafting court documents, maybe drafting contracts, and communicating with the client on a day-to-day basis. And then barristers usually come in if there's a dispute further down the line, preparing for court, although barristers do also have a little bit of an advisory role in some cases. So a lot of barristers can be real kind of subject matter experts. So sometimes we will instruct a barrister just to give kind of a second opinion.
Right. Okay. So there has to be
Well,
some kind of like teamwork between solicitors and barristers. They're
yeah,
not completely independent, like
no,
roles.
not at all. Yeah, they're absolutely teamwork between the two. And what I do is litigation, which it kind of disputes that lead to court. So I will be speaking to barristers kind of on a day-to-day basis,
Right.
and working with them.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you mentioned there about kind of going through different departments. What was that like, and how did you decide kind of at the end what you were most interested in and what you wanted to focus on?
So when I started, we got to put down 3 preferences out of like loads and loads of different areas. So I work in a commercial firm, so they were all like different commercial things. So there wasn't anything like family or crime. But so we got 3 choices. And then it was a little bit of luck of the draw, because not everybody necessarily got their choices. So my first 2 choices were things that I actually did not pick. And so the first one was property, and then the second one was basically construction and like big infrastructure projects. And although I didn't necessarily pick them and they weren't my first choices, they were still really valuable experiences, because you get to learn a lot. And I think that's the importance of like keeping a bit of an open mind. And I still use things I learned from those now, even though they're not ultimately what I decided to do. And then I'd been interested in intellectual property for like a really long time and enjoyed that most at uni. So that was my first choice while I was doing my rotations. And so I got that seat. Eventually really loved that, and then was a bit torn on what to pick for my final seat, but hadn't had much experience with disputes, so I thought I'll kind of put that down. And then absolutely loved it. Decided that was what I wanted to go through with.
Oh, that's amazing. I feel like that's nice to hear that you get that opportunity to experience different things, different departments. Obviously kind of law is absolutely massive. So you can't be expected to know exactly what you want to do as soon as you leave uni. So I feel like that's nice that you get that opportunity to explore some different departments and things like that. So in your current job then, what does a typical day look like for you? What sorts of things do you get up to? I know we were talking kind of right at the beginning, and you were mentioning that you are still kind of doing a little bit of a split from home-based work and being in the office. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, that's right. So about 2 or 3 days a week I've been going into the office. Then the others from home. But the work I do roughly the same. It'll just be when I'm in the office a little bit more like face-to-face meetings, or perhaps travel to other offices. But day to day, kind of the work will be very similar, regardless of whether I'm at my desk at home or at my desk in the office. So the first thing I tend to do when I get to work is check my emails, write a to-do list. I've often got like multiple different jobs on at any one time, so it's like necessary to prioritize and see what's the most important and what needs to be done that day. The work I actually do can be really broad ranging, and that's one thing I like about this area. It's really varied, so it can involve, so just thinking of some of the things I've got on at the moment, I've got like a government dispute, some company fraud, and some weird and wonderful matters like 2 producers of biscuits having an argument about one copying the other biscuit. And
no way.
So in terms of like the actual work I'll be doing for that, it might be taking a call from a client who's got a problem, and then them talking through what they need. It might be kind of writing a letter to another side. So for example, if we work for one biscuit company, I might be writing a letter to the other one saying that we're really not happy about them copying our biscuit. There'll be a lot of kind of strategy kind of planning for matters, and there's a lot of strategy involved in law. I'll be doing legal research to see how we can support our arguments, where our arguments might be weak. And I also do quite a lot of investigatory work. So for example, on some disputes we'll have like we'll have to look for the evidence of what's happened. So there might be loads of documents and going through, and I quite like that work. You feel a little bit like a detective, even though your job is not that cool. to like form a case. You can also be writing court documents and things like that. So like I mentioned previously, there's a lot of kind of English based and writing based skills in there, and I think that's what I enjoy about that. What's also really good about the firm that I work for is that there's lots of opportunities to do voluntary legal work as well. So I'm usually at any one time picking up quite a lot of that. So at the moment I'm doing some work, some human rights work, supporting refugees.
Amazing.
Thank you. So I've done some work getting them out of horrible accommodation in the UK and into better accommodation. And at the moment, it's sort of helping them get better accommodation on a Greek island. Well, move them from a Greek island to mainland Greece. And there's loads of opportunities for work like that as well, which I really love. And I've done some work like protecting wildlife in Mauritius and things like that. So yeah, what I like about it is that it's really, really varied.
Oh, that is so cool. And I feel like that's the work that you maybe don't hear about as much in terms of when you think of a career in law. I feel like you might not hear about those opportunities as much. That's really lovely to hear that you're getting to do all of that extra stuff as well.
I take on too much of it and then I'm like, try to cram it all into my day. But yeah, it's really makes it worthwhile.
So when kind of touching on that, how many hours do you work a week? Is it varied as well in terms of how much you've got on and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it can be really, really varied. So I think there is a bit of a myth that careers in law can be like non-stop, really long hours, really late nights. It can be like that, but there's times as well where it's really quiet. So it also really depends on your practice area. So for example, my practice area, there have been weeks where I've got lots of different matters on, court deadlines. It can be really, really busy, some late nights. But at other times, for example, this week, I'm not that busy. I sort of will work a regular 9 to 5. And yeah, it really, really depends. It also depends on your practice area. So I think traditionally some areas like wills and family law have sort of more regular, predictable hours, where sometimes commercial jobs have less predictable hours. But then even within a commercial firm, it can really wildly vary depending on like the team itself and the firm, the area. So, but generally, I'd say it's quite steady. And I think, although there are myths like really, really long hours, a lot of places are doing a lot to combat that and really mindful of people's well-being. So it's definitely like
I think that
not too bad.
Yeah, I think like even when you speak to students, I think some of them are put off by the idea of that it's going to be just non-stop, like huge working weeks. But like you said, I think in lots of jobs, you have times when you're busier than other times. I think that's just part of having a career. So so I think that's nice to hear. I think that's good for students to hear that it does kind of you will have busy times, but equally you will have more kind of normal working weeks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like my firm in particular are like embracing flexibility quite a lot more. So if you're not busy, they're not expecting you to necessarily be available between 9 and 5. It might be that you log on a bit later, work a bit later. It might be that it suits you to start working really early in the morning and finish earlier. So there's definitely a lot more scope for that now.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think a lot of companies are moving towards that. I think particularly after obviously the last couple of years, not to bring up COVID, but yeah, I think a lot of companies now are realizing that actually it probably does work, and
it's really important.
Definitely. And I think particularly when you've got a job like yours, and like you said, it can be quite intense sometimes. Maybe you've got loads of different projects on or whatever. I think knowing that you've got that little bit of flexibility is good, and that you've got the backing of your firm as well. I think is good as well. That's amazing. Is there anything that you do as part of your role that maybe surprised you, that you maybe didn't realize that would be involved, or anything that you do now that maybe is new to you? Or
I think when I started doing law, I didn't realize that it surprised me like how many different paths there were that you could go down. So when I actually started to consider a career actually as a lawyer, I kind of thought it would be more commercial or crime, or like more of a family solicitor, or somebody who does wills in a smaller high street firm. But I didn't realize just how many areas of law there are, and that really surprised me. And I think in that respect, like, there is really a practice area to suit like so many people's interests, whether you're kind of interested in technology. I mean, you can very much specialize in technology law, or whether you're interested in, but there's so many areas I can't like think of specific examples.
I totally get
science and things like that. You can really use other interests and pursue them in law. So I think that really surprised me. I think
so. Obviously, kind of the whole purpose of these interviews is really to inspire young people who maybe are considering a career in law, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're somebody that just absolutely loves English, and now they're realizing that potentially law could be an opportunity for them. So what advice would you give to somebody who is in year 11 and they're going to be leaving school, thinking about A-levels and beyond? What sort of advice would you give them?
So first of all, if you're thinking about A-levels, well, law is a really good one to do if you were interested in studying law. By no means feel like you have to do it, and it's the same at uni. You can do completely different A-level subjects, completely different degree, and I genuinely mean anything. I work with people who did like such a wide range of subjects at uni. Like, some did chemistry, for example, got history, English, geography. It's really a career that you can move into with any background. So if law really interests you as a degree, that's great. But equally, if it doesn't, and you feel like you've got a particular interest that you'd rather explore first, and keep law as an option, definitely don't feel like you need to do law and pursue your interests. Likewise, I think I would really consider the apprenticeship route if you think that that's something that might be of interest to you, and if you don't think that uni is the path that you necessarily want to go down. More and more firms are offering an apprenticeship route, that's a really good alternative. I would also say try and get as much work experiences as possible, and that might not be sort of formal work experience. You might be able to get sort of voluntary work experience, especially when you start uni. There's a lot of like free legal clinics and things like that you can work at, and that just sort of helps you determine whether you want to do it or not. And it's quite good to get experience if you can with solicitors and barristers, because most people are quite strongly drawn to one or the other. And I think that's because barrister work involves a lot of public speaking and confidence, and so I think they are quite different. So if you can experience both, that's great. But then moving on to sort of applying for jobs or work experience at uni, really don't underestimate the power of like any work experience, legal or not. Like, when I applied for my job, I had barely any legal work experience because I found it quite hard to get, actually, but sort of just drew on loads of voluntary and part-time work experiences. So I would just try to make the most out of those opportunities as well. I think when I was even in my second year of uni, I really didn't know about a lot of this until my third year. So I think knowledge is power, and talk to as many people as possible. And
definitely amazing. That's fab. I feel like you've been just amazing. Honestly, I think hearing it from somebody who is currently doing it and somebody who has just gone through all of that study and training, and you're now in the role, I think that is so valuable for students. And we can kind of, as people who maybe work in careers, I can sit and tell students, you might be interested in law, but I think to hear it from somebody who's doing it is so different, and so great. So you have just been fantastic. But
great.
Best day.
And you? See you later. Bye.